American Fairytale, Chapter 5. His father had a 20-pound bag of metal arrowheads. For weeks, they had worked at making arrows. At one point, William asked his father, "How many are we gonna make?" His father answered, "In war, no one can ever have too many arrows." New tests were devised for William. One was, every time he came back from hunting, he had to watch for a straw man hidden on the trail. "Father," he complained, "I am loaded down with meat and tired on the trip home. Couldn't I play this game in the morning on my way to draw water?" The answer was no. Worse, William found out if he failed to find the straw man, he was not allowed to read or play chess that night. Suffice it to say, William got good at finding the straw man. His father had also purchased parchment and ink. He explained, "Before I was reborn, I was afraid of the dark power of my enemy. Now I have nothing to fear. I will draw it." William grumbled, "Father, what are you going on about?" "I saw it, son. When I was in the Orient hunting the wizard, I saw drawings of his engines painted on a huge wall. As I gazed upon it, my hair stood up on the back of my neck, realizing I faced dark magic. Despite my fear, I fought the wizard's minions who rushed me. The wizard was the most terrible of all. His staff spat death in great gouts of fire. Objects around me were smashed into fine dust as he tried to hit me. The wizard wasn't ready for me that time, and when he realized the danger I posed, he rent the earth under the house with his black magic, destroying it and almost killing me in the process. It was only by providence of Almighty God that I survived the ensuing Holocaust. I was buried alive for 3 days until some nearby villagers dug me out. The wizard was furious." That winter, Father spent time drawing. His first problem was making what he saw in his mind come out onto the paper. Paper after paper was crumpled up and tossed into the fire after an hour of work. What he kept, he fastened to the wall. Sometimes he would spend hours staring at it, trying to decipher its meaning. William had no clue what it all meant. It was a jumble of things, which didn't seem to have anything to do with each other. William did look at each new part as it was added, but otherwise he ignored his father's puzzle. 1774 started out with a lot of cold and rain. His father waited until March, but when the bitter winter didn't abate, he felt he couldn't wait any longer. As rain beat on the roof, his father gathered up his gear. "I go to hunt the wizard, son. On my way, I'll send someone with more arrowheads for you. I expect them all made into arrows on my return. Think hard about this wizard business while I'm gone. If you decide this isn't your fight, you may return to your grandfather when I get back. If you stay, then you are committed to the conflict. If I'm not back by winter, leave and go back to your grandfather when the spring comes. Don't take much with you because your grandfather can easily replace physical possessions. God bless you, son." With that, he slipped out the door and was gone. By the end of March, the rain finally stopped, and nice weather followed day after day. One of those bright days in April was his birthday, and he woke with great anticipation. The knock on the door revealed the biggest parade of people and gifts yet. Huge boxes were hauled up the hill by an army of men. William groaned when he saw the size of some of the boxes, one so massive that it was carried on poles by 10 men. He was even more dismayed when he saw what was inside them. The largest item looked like a harpsichord, but he was told it was a pianoforte. I don't think we have room for this," he told the men weakly. A slight man in a butler's outfit replied, "Your grandfather has sent craftsmen to build you a conservatory." William wasn't sure what his father would think of that, but he allowed it since his grandfather thought it was a good idea. The workmen started that very day. More instruments were in the other boxes. A lute, flute, trumpet, and violin were carefully unpacked for him to see. "Does grandfather plan on sending a group of musicians to live with me?" he asked, concerned. "They are for you, young master," the slight man replied. "Your grandfather worries that your life is too dull out here, and so he has sent you instruments and teachers." "Teachers?" William gulped. Two twin men stepped forward and bowed. "What is in the other boxes?" William asked, his voice squeaking a bit. Out came paints and canvases, more books, and a strange bag of tools. "Are these doctor's instruments?" William asked, holding up a small hacksaw. The butler nodded. "Your grandfather is worried that you are bored out here, so he sent you paints. He also thinks a basic knowledge of medicine will benefit you out in the wild." William stared aghast at all the stuff and the people around him. Grandfather really didn't have to go through all this much trouble on my account. The butler snorted gently. "Master Williams, you are all he lives for now." Looking about him, William said, "Please tell Grandfather his gifts are wonderful when you see him. I'm not going back, Master William. My name is Jim Staunton, and I'm your new butler." "A butler?" William exclaimed. Inside he wondered, what will Father think of this? Suddenly, William had bigger problems than his father's feelings. The chief of the Chickasaw village came onto the hill with a huge war band. Some of his workmen went for their guns, but William commanded them to stop. The Chickasaw warriors could have killed every man in the clearing without warning, and if they had chosen to. Better to see what they wanted. William jogged over to the chief. The chief said, "When you came, we were told that only 2 would live among us for a great price, and we agreed. We kept our word to you, Little Moon, but you have spoken falsely. Your house begins to look like English town." William explained that the workmen were not staying after the job was finished. He also explained the twins were only going to be there to teach him music. Taking the chief over, the boy let him inspect the instruments. Pointing to the pianoforte, the chief asked, "How do you blow or beat on that one?" Quickly the twins gave the chief a mini concert. Despite the fact that the instrument was halfway through being retuned because of the long journey, the twins made it sing as they caressed its keys. The chief was mollified on that point. Looking around, he asked, "Are all these staying?" "Not quite. It seems I have a butler now, too." "A butler?" the chief asked, not sure what that was. William tried to explain, but he only seemed to confuse the chief. Then suddenly the chief laughed. "These are your new slaves. Why didn't you tell me?" William tried to again list what the concepts of a servant entailed, but the Chickasaw chief had his mind made up. "Slaves are fine, Moon." William wasn't sure what the twins or his new butler would think of being called slaves, but he let it alone. As quickly as the chief had come, he was gone. William was certain if the chief was not fond of his father, they would have been killed without a second thought. "I would have sold my life dearly," he thought with a grim smile. But his smile faded as he remembered the Bible said something about it being better to be a living dog than a dead lion. The brush with death opened his eyes another way. Walking up to the butler, he stated, "My grandfather might be rich, but he is not a wasteful man. What is the real reason behind the music, painting, and medical lessons?" The butler examined the 17-year-old before him with an approving gaze. "You are as sharp as your grandfather claimed. You will be returning to England in the next few years, and your grandfather merely wants you to be well-rounded. He grows weary of what he calls the court of popinjays. He claims these rich young men have nothing to do but gossip and gamble. He told me that his grandson was not going to turn out like that lot. He also thinks extra skills might win the heart of a rare beauty." William chuckled. "I'm not worried about marriage yet. Your grandfather is. He complains that he is not getting any younger. He would like to see his great-grandchildren before he dies." William tried to imagine himself in a large estate with a great lady as a wife, traveling daily to London. He then tried to imagine himself as an officer in the British Army. Both times he failed. He wondered if any of the dreams of childhood were his dreams now. Frankly, he had been too busy with now to worry about later. "My father says I have the liberty to take my leave this winter." "Splendid! I will send word immediately." "You don't understand. I said he would allow me to go, but I did not say that I will." "What nonsense is this, boy? Do you not understand how rich your grandfather is? Do you not realize how much he loves you?" "Hang his riches, sir. Were he the rudest of people in all of England, I would still love him." "What is the trouble, then?" "My father faces a terrible enemy. I must help him before I return to grandfather." "An enemy? Who? A colonist? A savage? An Englishman?" Seeing William shake his head negatively, he blurted out, "A pirate from the deep, perhaps." "None of these. My father faces a wizard." "A wizard?" "Yes. He has a staff that belches death, a spellbook of great power, and evil minions." "What rot! Listen here, William. Are you funning with me, boy?" "I swear on my mother's grave that I am not." "Then your father is funning with you, or is using a cruel lie to keep you in his thrall." "My father is no liar, sir. It is foolishness to say this behind his back, and folly to his face. If my father says there is a wizard, then a wizard there must be." That did not settle the matter, but they were at an impasse, and both had to live with it. Soon there was a large conservatory with several guest bedrooms. Each new bedroom was furnished with a bed, a chest, a wardrobe, and a rug. The workmen left, but life did not return to its normal rhythm. The butler insisted on tending the garden, cleaning the house, and cooking meals, so that William could practice music. Between the twins' teaching and hours of practice, his skill as a musician gained daily. His new butler, Staunton, did not understand the hours the boy spent on archery, complaining constantly until he actually observed and practiced. He never brought it up again after that. Trueheart and Truepath came to visit. They were shocked at how large the house had become. William was giving a tour when Trueheart saw a flute sitting out. "Moon, may I play it?" she asked, holding it up. Soon a hauntingly beautiful song came from the flute. The twins both raised their eyebrows. "She's from France," William explained. Trueheart stopped playing. "My tribe has played the Euskala for a long time, but I do like your flutes better. 6 holes gives me more choices than 2, although I can cover the bottom of my Euskala for more variety." "Well, if you like it that much, you can have it," William insisted, when she tried to give it back. Suddenly Staunton hissed, "You're giving her a flute?" William shrugged. "Well, I can't very well give her the piano, can I?" His butler left in a huff. The twins were very taken with Trueheart. They had never heard a flute played with such a haunting quality. They picked up on what she was doing, and soon music filled the room. Then she surprised them by knowing several famous English pieces. When they asked her about it, she told them in broken English, "I was trapped inside a large building with no woods to run in. I could not feel the wind on my face, the leaves under my foot, and my eyes could not see the animals as they went about their business. Music was my only escape. As I played, my mind imagined a forest, and music breathed life into my waking dream. When I went home, no one thought about letting the savage girl keep her flute." Trueheart won Staunton over later that day. As he was working in the garden, she joined him. At first they worked in silence, but then she asked the butler something in French. He answered, and before long they were talking as they worked. She so enchanted him that William was sure he would have given Trueheart the pinafore, and this butler would have attempted to carry it home for her, had she asked. 4 happy days passed as work was done. Music played, archery practiced, and friendships deepened. On the 5th day, however, a rough-looking man came at dawn. He had a long rifle over his shoulder, with a brace of pistols at his waist. His name was Sebastian, and he was seeking William's father. "I'm sorry, but he's not here right now," William told him. Pulling a package from off his back, Sebastian handed it to William, along with a sealed envelope. Tearing open the letter, William found a note from his father. "This is Sebastian. He is a Templar like me. Help him in any way he asks. The package he carries is for your brother, Truepath. If I have 2 boys, it's not fair only that one of you gets birthday gifts. Tell him happy birthday for me." William handed the package to Truepath, reading him some of the letter. With a curious look, Truepath opened it to find a longbow, the same strength as William's. Truepath was very pleased with it. They offered Sebastian food, and as he ate, William told him what his father had said before he left. "So it finally begins," Sebastian said as he finished eating. "I'll stay the night and leave at dawn. Tell your father I'll be back in late November with an army." Truepath perked up at the word army and asked what was going on. William told him the story of the wizard in French, and then took them to look at his father's pictures. "I do not understand this word wizard," Truepath said, frowning. "He is a human version of the Naluschitu, except maybe worse. He can direct the spirits." Truepath became agitated. "The spirits have been angry lately." "What do you mean?" Truepath explained that late last year, the Chickasaw discovered a haunted part of the river. The spirits were stealing people and swallowing them up. The Choctaw also had been losing people headed west. They'd set out and then vanish. When the winter rains had let up, a joint Chickasaw and Choctaw war party investigated the haunted part of the river. They too vanished. The Chickasaw had set up a watchman on the far side of the river from the haunted area to see if they could observe why the spirits were so angry. In the morning, when their brethren came to relieve them, they were gone without a trace. A war council had been held, and the Creek mocked them for being so scared. They thought these were mere stories, so they set up their own watches in the woods, but these also vanished. Truepath explained that he had not bothered Moon with it, as he was an Englishman and didn't understand spiritual matters of the earth. "Will you take me to this place?" Sebastian asked excitedly. Truepath balked. "The chiefs have ordered that no one go near the haunted area until they know what to do." William retorted, "But Truepath, this man might be able to help. If the wizard is causing trouble, this man wants to stop him." "I will take you to the chief of the nearby Chickasaw village. If he gives permission, I will lead you to the place, but I will not stay." "That will be fine," Sebastian assured him. "Can I leave Trueheart with you for a few days?" Truepath asked William. "You are my brother, and Trueheart is my sister. Does a sister have to ask permission to stay in her own house?" At dawn they departed, leaving anxious friends behind. William worked on arrows, refusing to practice music until Truepath returned. Trueheart also did not feel like music. She worked in the garden or cooked, but she was too anxious to play the flute. 3 days later, Truepath came back. He told them that the chief had allowed the journey. Truepath rode Sebastian to the haunted area and then rode back. Truepath collected his sister, explaining that they needed to return to their tribe with news of this wizard. The additional information would be important for dealing with the haunted area. William wished he could do something, but his father had made it very clear he was to wait, so wait he did. His music lessons resumed. Summer went on into fall, and still there was no sign of father. The official contract of the twins expired. "Your grandfather may not pay us any longer, but it is so peaceful here, we'd like to stay," they told William. "What about the wizard?" William asked. The twins shrugged. Their staying gave him 2 more mouths to feed, but William liked them, so he didn't mind. Although they did a few daily tasks, the twins paid William back by filling the house with music and continuing his lessons. Then the butler declared it was time for him to learn to draw and paint. Each day his butler made him draw something different. This was harder than William thought it would be, but he kept at it. Staunton then taught him how to paint. They painted trees, leaves, the sky, the house, different objects, but still his father did not come. Sebastian returned. He had with him 400 British regulars. They set up in the valley below the house, waiting for William's father. Sebastian and the officers quartered in the house with William and his household. It was then William began to suspect they were not British soldiers. Although they appeared British in their uniforms and talked with British accents, something seemed off. The more he was around them, the more he was sure of it. His father had turned thin as a rail, his clothes ruined. After he cleaned up and ate some food, he began to talk to Sebastian and the quote-unquote British officers. The first thing he did was draw a rough map to the area where the wizard roosted. The wizard has a small tower built of huge bricks, about 600 paces from the river. It is surrounded by a fordable wooden palisade. I can hear soldiers walking around the walls, but they are totally obscured. The forest surrounding the structure is patrolled by the wizard's underlings, and is covered with traps and ambush points. There is a path to the west that runs to the tower, but it is well guarded. For some reason, the river area directly in front of the tower has no force of any kind that I could see. Under cover of darkness, the wizard's minions often take the western road, so I followed them to see what they were up to. I discovered they were hunting for slaves. I watched them capture a group of Choctaw traveling west. Captives are bound one to another and then march back to the tower, always traveling at night. Large groups of captives march into the tower, are swallowed up, and never seen again. I spent a month watching, but not a single prisoner emerged from it. Since there are large numbers of people moving into a relatively small tower structure, it would appear the wizard has tunnels and caverns underground. No smoke comes from the tower, even on cold days, so unless they eat their meat raw, the wizard has some magical way of providing food for all these people. Sebastian rubbed his hands together. So, you are saying that we should travel along the river by boat and attack there. Attack here. He pointed to the eastern area near the river in front of the tower. No, I fear there is a reason they do not have this area defended. Until we know what the reason is, it would be folly to attack them. Folly? Folly? I have 400 men. With the river as my supply line, I can land and besiege the tower. 400 against the wizard? Sebastian, even if you had 4,000 men, I would counsel caution. Do you know how hard I worked to get them here? I can't just send them back. They're not real British soldiers, old boy, and you know it. Questions will be asked. Better questions than getting them all killed. Sebastian grew angry. You may be scared of this wizard fellow, but I'm not. We will move out before the winter rain or snow gets too severe. The next day, the British soldiers marched off to the river, where they had several men guarding their large river boats. He's a fool, William's father muttered. The wizard can't be taken by direct confrontation. He is far too powerful. His father bought another bag of broadheads, so more arrows had to be made. As his father pulled out the bag, he heard the twins playing music. With all the officers around, he had not realized that the twins were actually new members of the household. In fact, he had been so tired, he did not realize that a new addition had been put on. Marching into the conservatory, he stopped flabbergasted. Are we entertaining the king and queen for tea later? He thundered. What is all of this? All of a sudden, the size of the room dawned on him. Did you build this, son? No, father. Well, it did not build itself. Yes, father. You see, Gran, is that a harpsichord? How did such a thing get here? Actually, it's a pianoforte, father. The twins were sent by Grandpa to teach me how to play an instrument of my choice. He feels before I return to England, I should be well-rounded. Apparently, being well-rounded makes for better marriage situations. Father glanced at him sharply. You are leaving, then? Oh, can't say that I blame you. In fact, to be honest, part of me is relieved. I'm not leaving, father. Not until this wizard business is cleared up, anyway. His father smiled. The other half of me is proud of you, son. Then his expression turned grim. Is your grandfather paying for their room and board? They don't look like they are good for much real work. The twins were distressed at this, but William defended them. Grandpa had their rooms built, so I dare say that takes care of room. As for food, I think music is worth something. If anything, I believe the twins have the worst end of this deal, because they give us a taste of heaven every time they play. The twins straightened up. On top of that, they do a few household chores, so I think we make out quite well indeed. His father sighed. Perhaps I have reacted, gentlemen. The good book says a laborer is worthy of his hire, and if you're that good, then we are indeed blessed to have you. At that moment, William's butler walked in. Breakfast is served. William cringed as his father thundered, Who is this? He's my butler, father. Your butler? I thought he was a servant of one of the officers. What do we pay him? Nothing, father. Grandpa pays him. Even if we had to pay him, he'd be worth it. My butler can do the work of 3 men. Fine, said his father shortly, heading for the dining room. Are there any more residents I should know about? The King of France, perhaps. Breakfast was wonderful. William could tell the butler rose a few notches in his father's esteem because of it. Yet Staunton wasn't worried about his father's approval. After breakfast, he blurted out, When those British soldiers take care of this wizard chap, you'll allow William to return to England? Father set down his cup heavily. They won't take care of them. Brother Sebastian's aggressiveness has finally got him into trouble. He won't be able to cut his way out of. But they have 400 British regulars. William's father laughed bitterly. Don't insult them. They are far superior to British English regulars, but they will count for nothing when they fight the wizard. Getting up, he said, Come, William. Let us see how your skill as an archer is progressing. William hit targets that would have made a crowd in London Street shower him with coins and cheers. Father merely nodded. You are becoming a passable archer. It is time you learned to deal with moving targets. From his room, Father brought out a long rope. He tied one end to a tree at the top of the hill and one at the other end near the bottom. Next, his father clicked a wheel device onto the rope, and then he attached a second piece of rope to it. Almost ready, he muttered, heading back to the house. Opening William's wardrobe, he pulled out his son's finest outfit. Back outside, he began stuffing it with old straw. Staunton was not pleased, striding over to challenge William's father. Without looking up, William's father said, Fancy clothes will not stop the wizard's men, but skill might. Staunton stopped off as his father finished crafting the head out of an old shirt. Father put grease on the wheels and then attached the straw man to the rope. Throwing the second rope over a branch at the top of the hill, Father turned. When I say go, you must put an arrow to the string and hit this target as many times as you can. Are you ready? Go! With that, his father ran toward the house with the rope. The straw man began to rush up toward William as William fired an arrow, missing it completely. William's second arrow hit it before it hit the top, but Father was not pleased. Again and again, his father pulled the straw man up the hill, demanding William hit it with 2 arrows before it came to a stop. Hour after hour they worked until William could not pull the bow back any longer. Come on, his father rumbled. We hunt now. Off they ran, and 2 hours later they killed a large boar. While they were cutting it up, William asked, Father, what nationality are those men? Those are soldiers that could pass as French, British, or even Hessian soldiers, but they are actually Swiss by birth, given to the Mother Church. This division aids the Templar on missions that require more than a single man. They mimic the language and habits of soldiers of different nations. In reality, they are far more dangerous than the soldiers they pretend to be, experts in hand-to-hand combat and firearms. None of these skills will help them against the wizard. Several days passed with no word from the British force. Finally, some brave Chickasaw warriors went up the river to discover their fate. The warriors did not return either. 3 more days passed when a British lieutenant stumbled back to the woods. He was delirious, babbling in a strange tongue that William guessed must be Swiss. Staunton and William's father took care of him. His butler had been a surgeon in the 7 Years' War, and used every bit of that experience in keeping the officer alive. For over a week, the outlook was grim, but somehow the officer hung on. Then he started to mend. One day, when the snow was falling, he was ready to tell his tale. And that is the end of Chapter 5.